Good
My big
morning.
news.
Welcome to the Light on Suitability podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Comeau, with co-host Joe Haytas, author of 36 Strategies of Suitability, which we're working through continuously. Welcome back, everybody, after the holidays. And my good friend, Mr. Gawlik, who's always here, ready, willing, and able. He's got some exciting news that he wants to share with us. So you go for it, and then we'll dive into the chapter.
Well, one of my big goals for the new year I have accomplished. I got myself a vehicle. I got a 2018 Nissan Sentra with low mileage on it, under 100,000 miles on it. So I'm really happy.
That's really cool. I saw the photos that you sent me. Really, thank you for sharing that experience with me. You looked really happy. Yeah.
I am.
Great.
I mean, it's always nice to have a good car. I don't want to spoil anybody's good car news, but as you know, I was in that I had an accident during my grief. Back to the grief. I'm over the grief. I let go of the grief over Bruno, thank God. But during that time, while I was feeding my grief on the way to the prison, I shouldn't have been driving to the prison. I should have just stayed home. But grief and driving isn't a good combo. Anyway, I sailed through that stop sign and I hit that guy, the grandpa with his 3 kids in the car. Nobody was hurt. Nobody's hurt. But anyway, it was still just very, I don't know what it was just not a good scene. I shouldn't have been on the road. So then my husband's like, we're getting you a self-driving car, which would have saved my bacon in that accident because the car wouldn't have gone if I was in a self-driving mode. So I did get one. They were giving them away at the end of the year. So I went for it. We went for it. I went for it and I got one. And I've been using the self-driving and it's interesting. Maybe when we're down there, Joe, I'll take you for a spin. It's pretty interesting.
You have a self-driving car?
Yeah, the Teslas are self-driving.
Oh, yeah?
They're pseudo self-driving. You have to pay attention. You have to have your hands on the wheel. You have to be paying attention. The car sees where your eyes are, which is a little creepy, but whatever. I mean, it's like telling me, get your eyes back on the road. Put your hands on the wheel. Pay attention. Take your hat off. We can't see you. So anyway, I am grateful to have it. I have been using it's a beta test. It's beta testing right now. And yeah, they were giving them away at the end of the year. And with the end of the year tax thing and all that, I was like, yes, I might as well. My car is like 10 years old with 160,000 miles on it. It's a great car. My other car was a great car. Anyway, I got off on a tangent, but it's been fun. The car it's pretty fun. All the bells and whistles are obviously fun. The self-driving you do have to pay attention because it does some random stuff that you're not sure. And you have your own driving habits, which may or may not be good habits, but in any event, it certainly has shown me it can be very cautious in some occasions and not cautious in others. So it's weird, but it comes with its pros and cons. To gas up takes me 40 minutes. So it's gassing. You have to sit there for like 40 minutes to top it up. So 30 to 40 minutes. So you have to be organized and just use that time, wisely if you want, or just relax or take a nap. Anyway, we're here not to talk about my Tesla. I haven't had anybody talk to for a while. So strategy 26 is considering the hearing from the commissioner's point of view. Joe has a great quote here as well. Football is like life. It requires perseverance, self-denial, hard work, sacrifice, dedication, and respect for authority. I bet you put it in there, respect for authority. What resonated with that quote? Was it that part of it? Was there more to that quote and the chapter itself? This is an interesting chapter.
Well, it was about authority, respecting authority, and the commissioners are the authority. And preparing for the hearing takes perseverance, self-denial, hard work, sacrifice, dedication to change. So all of those things, the
Yeah.
preparation and then the respect for authority. And, to have respect is really to listen to them, especially if they got denied, and, the recommendations, to take them seriously. And that's the respect I was talking about, really.
Understood. Yeah. And I like it's kind of like back to empathy too. Your chapter is sort of has a lot about that in there, meaning, think about putting yourself in their shoes. They have to read your documents and they're listening to what you have to say. They have to make a pretty hard decision. I mean, they're there to be a check and balance for society, making sure that they're releasing the right people but still following the law. So they can't really just go on their gut. They've got to go on the documents you present. They've got a lot going on. So, presenting yourself in a way that you would present to yourself if you were the commissioner. Sorry, a lot of birds around here fly into these windows constantly. And I put bird protectors up, and I got to get more.
Also, too, with regards to the commissioners, they get pulled in a lot of different ways. They can't please everybody. They have the incarcerated person, the incarcerated person's family, the BPH, the governor, not to mention us attorneys, So,
the victims is a big deal.
Oh,
Victims,
the fact they have to deal with them. Correct.
You have to be so extremely respectful. And I think it does change. It does make it harder to get a grant of parole. But if you're ready, they will grant parole.
Mm-hmm.
And I was interested to hear your perspective on how you feel about this chapter and so on, based now that you have a whole bunch of different commissioners under a whole bunch of different, our structured decision-making framework, and just I don't know, the climate, anything different that you see for this chapter in light of,
Well, going with all the people they have to, please, if you will, which they don't really have to please them, but they have to deal with them. Anything else? Well, they're the commissioners are human, and they have families, and when they go out on the street, they don't, they want to be safe too, So that's the other part of it. And then finding a legal reason to grant parole or to deny parole. There's a lot of things playing. A lot of dynamics that play into their job. And when you go before them, you have to, I think, to a large extent, you have to be understanding of them, especially for the incarcerated person. The incarcerated person goes in there and wants to be granted parole. Of course they do, but it's not so simple, and everything falls on the commissioner. I think, things fall on everybody else too, but they're the ones making the decision. They're the decision makers, and you have to, from time to time, put yourself in their shoes and see all the responsibility that they have. If they let out somebody, grant parole to somebody who recidivates, that doesn't, I'm not going to say it's a bad mark for them. Because they were going on the information they had at the time. But if somebody recidivates and does something really bad, then they have to deal with the media also. If something happens, they'll say, "Oh, Commissioner so-and-so granted parole to this person, and this person went out and, hurt somebody else. I know that rarely happens, but I mean, it's another thing I'm sure they consider.
And it happens. It happens, and they see it, and you can see too, sometimes when they've had a bad run, perhaps not a bad, I don't know if that's not the right phrase, but where they've sat in Wasco for a week of hearings with people having come back on parole violations and seeing that, hey, you previously sat before us and said, hey, I got this, I got this, I got this. And I think a lot of clients say, but I got this, I feel ready. It's like, that's nice. But how are they going to assess your readiness beyond that statement? And a lot of my clients, it's tricky, and I'm sure you have the same issues. It's like, yeah, but I know I'm ready. And it's so much more. You have to present evidence of readiness, and also, be prepared to, when they're asking you a question, put yourself in their shoes. Don't figure out why they're asking the question. Just answer the question and stop making assumptions about, what it is they're after. And also appreciate the fact that they have to make a tough call. And there are occasions where they have, they get upset if you say this, but they got it wrong, but not legally, but they got it wrong. The guy wasn't ready because he recidivated. Okay. I know that's a little bit too black and white, but he didn't have a really strong relapse prevention plan, or he didn't have the parole resources, or he didn't have really, he was able to say all the right things to get the grant under the wire of the structured decision-making framework. But when push came to shove, he really, didn't have it. And just to get off on a tangent, I do see those transcripts, and I often wonder sometimes how the heck did they even get granted? But that's just, hindsight is super cool too. It makes it really easy to figure out. So let me turn it over to you, Michael, and then because you've always got some really great insights after Joe and I have our 2 cents put in there.
Our commissioners are human. And as such, they have to go through all these files of all the people that they're reviewing. They have to read all of that traumatizing material. And there's a lot of it. I know just in my case alone, I mean, it was horrific. And, they have to live that vicariously through all the witness statements, all the court documents, through everything they hear at the hearings. And it's, with the just sheer amount of it they hear, it's got to take a toll on them. So, we have to understand that these people are human, that, everything we're putting them through just to get us to that hearing, we have to understand that, it could have a negative effect on them a little bit, and they may come in with a few preconceived ideas. It's up to us to present ourselves in a way that we get across that we're not that same person that they read about in all those court transcripts. So we have to take that into consideration first. And as such, if we're really living our change, we have to have empathy for them and what they're going through. I mean, I've heard stories of commissioners that by the time they get to the 3rd or 4th hearing of the day, they're just frazzled. They're going through a lot in one day just to hear all these cases. And then, so they're doing this week in and week out and week in and week out. It's not an easy thing. I mean, and I've had this discussion with some of my housemates, predominantly all paroled lifers and LWOPs. And I look at it from, if I was sitting on the board today, sitting on one of these panels, I might be a little more severe than some of them are, simply because I know what I had to go through to get where I am right now. So, these guys that are going before these board panels right now should really feel blessed that people like me aren't on there, because at this point, you can't bullshit somebody who's been through it. You really can't. So, and it gives me a whole new perspective on how these board members prepare. Like I said, they have to read through all this material. They have to read your parole plans. They have to read all your relapse prevention plans. They have to read all your remorse letters, all of the, psych evals, everything. And, yeah, like Elizabeth said, sometimes they get it wrong. Sometimes in both directions. Sometimes, they get to the end of the day, they're frazzled. Things are not going well. They've had a bad day. And somebody who really is prepared maybe makes a misstep or two during the hearing. And with a long day, it just doesn't go well for them. And other times, the guy gets out because of the legal aspect of it, because of the informed or the decision-making matrix. And I've known quite a few of those. So, the system's not perfect. The commissioners are not perfect. They're just people. And that's what I want everybody to understand first and foremost. They are just people. And they have probably one of the hardest jobs that I know of outside of an air traffic controller or a surgeon, because the decisions they make could, ultimately jeopardize somebody's life in society. If they let the wrong person out, and that person goes out, he gets drunk, gets in his car, kills somebody, goes in, robs a liquor store and kills somebody, it falls back on them to a degree. So, they are under a lot of pressure. And, the system isn't perfect. The commissioners aren't perfect. We're not perfect. Nobody in this situation is perfect. We all just do the best we can with the information we have and the tools that we have to deal with it. So if you go in there and you've been living your change, hopefully with everything else that the human being that is the commissioner goes through sees all this, they come to the right decision. Either way. And that's all we can hope for. When I went to the board the first time and got my 3-year denial, I honestly believe they made the absolute right decision. And as such, they really, they used all the tools at their disposal, and they determined that, I just wasn't ready. And when I look back on it, yeah, there was nothing I could say to disagree with that. But, they were compassionate in doing it. They gave me sound advice. They gave me a roadmap to follow to get me where I am today. And it's not that when they give somebody in denial, they don't care, that they're being heartless, no. They will give us every tool we need to learn to get out. It's up to us to follow it. If they wanted to see the prisons full and didn't want to let anybody out, they would find reasons to deny everybody. They wouldn't give us the tool belts to study for and to prepare for and to learn to live that they do. I've known guys who've gotten 7-year and 10-year denials, and they've told them exactly what they want to see at that end of that cycle. And some of them have gotten out because they followed it. They took to heart what this human being that is trying to guide them tells them. And, you know, we as human beings have to make our own decisions. But let's face it, these board members give us the best advice they can to get us out, to give us that chance. It's up to us to take it. It's up to us to listen to them and to understand their point of view, to understand what they have to go through to get us to where we are. And believe me, from the very first time that my name came up on that board parole list, they were working. They weren't just sitting around waiting for my parole hearing to come up. They were doing their due diligence, their research. They were reading everything, every piece of paper the attorneys submitted, that I submitted, that the DA submitted. They have a lot of work to do just for one person, for one hearing. And we have to appreciate that and do our best to facilitate that on our end for them. Because really, the easier we make their job, the better our chances. And the way we make their job easy is to live our change, be clear about how we present the information they ask for. Don't just go in there and start having diarrhea of the mouth, because, that's a mistake I hear a lot of people making. They get in, they'll ask a question, or the board will ask a question, and the person will just run on an answer for 10 minutes. And usually give them enough rope to hang themselves with. It's not the commissioners going in there just looking for something. They're giving us a fair chance. It's up to us to take it. But we have to understand that they are human. They do have good days and bad days. And we have to be empathetic and compassionate with them, because ultimately, they're doing the same thing with us. It may not seem like it sometimes, but if they didn't have any empathy for us at all, it would be a lot harder to get out. And a lot of these commissioners I see are really passionate about what they do. They take it very seriously, and they do understand that this could be a life or death decision. And we have to honor that also. Because, not everybody's ready to get out. And that makes their job that much harder when they come across it, because they're the ones that have to tell that person, no, you're not going home. This is why we decided you're not going home. And that can't be easy. So, with the weight of the decisions they have to make and all the vicarious and secondary trauma they go through by reading all these files, all these case notes, all these court transcripts, I don't envy their job. I really don't. And, I'm really appreciative of what they do and all the prep that goes into this. It's really a blessing that we do have this system in place, because there's some places in this world that once you're in prison, you just disappear. You just die there. Here, like I said, the system's not perfect, but guess what? It does work. But we have to be part of what makes it work. We have to make that that panel's job as easy as possible. We have to go in there. We have to show them how we've lived. We have to show them the insight we've gained. And we just have to have a conversation with them. I can't imagine how tired they get of people coming in there and spouting the 12 steps and spouting this tool and that tool and the other tool. This is stuff they've heard 1,000, 1,000,000 times. If we want to make their job as easy as possible, let's not go in there and just quote stuff we've read in the big book or in other self-help books. Go in there and show them how we've lived it. Explain how we've lived it. And you know what? It might be the difference between us going home and not. And, I bet just looking at it, they appreciate the fact that we're not just going in there spouting rhetoric. And, that's just kind of my perspective on how I would look at it if I was a commissioner. I don't want to hear somebody going in there and just spouting stuff out of a book. I want to see how somebody's lived. I want to see their changes. I want to see their sincerity and their empathy and their insight. So the only thing I can do is encourage everybody to have their family members that are going through this process stop, take a step back, and just look at these commissioners for what they are, people with a very hard job. And we need to recognize for ourselves if we're ready to go to board or not, if we're ready to make this change in our lives or not. And then, if we get into that room and we're honest with ourselves and we get that denial, don't take it out on the commissioners, because it was our fault ultimately. We weren't ready. I mean, sure, like we said, there's the ones that slip through the cracks both ways. But ultimately, it comes down to us, not the commissioners. We're the ones that set ourselves free. The commissioners are just the tools that do it, that give us the piece of paper that lets us out of here. We have to do the hard work, and we have to present it to them in a way that, gives them the justification to let us out. And I don't envy that job one bit. So that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Michael. That was great. That was really great. And that kind of covered the gamut of everything. And also, really trying to understand just taking it one step further when you have empathy, appreciate that they have to follow the law ultimately. And that works, like you said, both ways. But in following the law is why they get to ask you about everything. And even though I don't love it, it sometimes means they get to ask you about dismissed RVRs. Why? Because sometimes they're dismissed for technicalities, but you actually did engage in the fight or whatever. And they're there to see who you were then and who you are now. And they're comparing that past behavior. Why are they asking about a 1968 rape and making me do all this work for a night? It's not even my life crime. Because they have to follow the law. And the law says under California Supreme Court ruling, the reason the very cases, and Lawrence, that opened the door to all your freedoms were those cases, but they said, grant more parole because you're relying on only one thing, the life crime. So you can't just rely on the life crime, but you can rely on the insight behind the life crime and everything else you've done, including taking the candy bar out of the store when you're 5 years old. And why is that? Because ultimately, we're all the same people that we are. If you show us at 7 years old, it's probably quite similar to who we are today in most respects, especially 12 years old and especially 16 years old, because those threads are still there. And like you say, Michael, you're sitting around with people, and I bet you would see with loving eyes, hopefully, that they're really struggling. We're all struggling to overcome our programming, so to speak, most of us, because I don't know very many people that had totally functioning parents, functioning meaning emotionally intelligent parents, or an emotionally intelligent environment. Even if you did have good parents, maybe you had bullying. Bullying is so damaging, but they want to know about that stuff because they want to know what they're up against in terms of, okay, you were bullied And that's a type of PTSD that's going to happen. Are you ready for that kind of thing? We really need to know who you were and whether you've developed the tools around it, rather than just saying that's in the past, that doesn't define me. In parole hearings, it kind of does, because it will come up in the snap of a finger if you get triggered. And it's so weird. You could be triggered for some random thing. Just pumping gas can be a trigger to that old feeling of low self-esteem, or the panic, or the, oh my God, everybody's looking at me, or whatever, all the stupid stuff that we tell ourselves, and do you have the skills to deal with that, even in that simple moment? And I find a lot of people, I've had guys get violated because things started to go downhill because they felt self-conscious at the dinner table, not being able to figure out how to really eat in a sort of a dignified way, rather than the shovel way and that you have to do at the chow halls and things. I mean, I'm being overly dramatic, but that's how they explained it. It's like there's a different mentality in those chow halls than there are at the dinner table, and that became self-conscious. They start to isolate. Isolation led to using masks so they wouldn't isolate, and it was like boom, and so that's all these things that I try to tell my clients really to anticipate, because these commissioners, they really do need to know they need to know who you were then, which is who you are now, but with the additional coping skills and strategies that you didn't have back then that you do have now, with a little more emotional intelligence, a little more ability to really notice that if your amygdala is triggered, and you have the ability to go to the front and go, okay, wait, stop, just stop for a minute, think, process, breathe is so important. A meditative practice is so important. All these things, they just want to know that you can deal with it. You can deal with it and not go, oh, I got this. I never get angry. It's like, well, don't say that. Please don't say that at the parole hearing. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, we're always getting angry or thinking of some grievance or other, or looking at our brother or sister with some sort of side eye, like, you're not doing it the way I'm doing it, and shaming people, guilting them, and that sort of thing. But anyway, off on a tangent. But yeah, it's really important for you to understand the role they have to play, and they have to play it within the confines of the law. And even if they do have kind of a sense that they don't want to grant you parole, even though you check all the boxes, sometimes they are going to find a way, because there's something about you that they just don't feel comfortable about. And they will go out of their way to find ways. So that was said by Dannenberg. I think it's that something they can't quite figure out. It's that warm and fuzzy thing that they can get from you. Like, it's okay. It's okay. Like you said, it's okay if I let this person out. It's not going to be my name on the news having let him out after, or her redoing something from the past because an old wound was unaddressed. And that's what I feel a lot about these hearings as well, is like a lot of work on trauma and whether or not my clients have sufficiently addressed the trauma, not from putting it all together for causative factors, character defects, and triggers, but really, have you healed from your own trauma of having been a victim, which is 99% of our clients. Forget that you victimized for a minute. What have you done to heal from your trauma? Your parents should have been in prison in most of these cases. I mean, some of the stuff that these parents do is outrageous. And that's not to excuse your behavior. It never will. Maybe it will. One day we'll see it more of a restorative process. But in the meantime, you get punished for it and you have to look at it, not saying that you wouldn't have done that if you had better parents. That's just the way it is. That's the cause and effect of that situation. But they're not in prison. You are. So, heal. You need healing. On top of trying to make amends to others, you should make amends to yourself by doing that healing work. So sometimes I ask my clients, I go, oh yeah, I took anger management. Like, okay, yeah, that's not bad, but really something more along the lines of grip or houses of healing or something that's really going to take the time. Oh, those birds are just out of control. Take the time to help you nurture you and your wounded inner core and your inner child that didn't get what was supposed to be given, which was nurture, support, love, attention, validation, your feelings, opinions, experiences respected. That all needs to be repaired as well. So any final thoughts, Joe?
Thank you. I really don't have anything to add of substance. You guys kind of nailed it. You're right on. I think what Michael said about living the change and then being clear about it in the hearing, that's a key. But yeah, the commissioners have all these things going on, and we have to be empathetic with them. They're trying to do the best they can, and they're answering to a lot of different people. So just come to the hearing as prepared as possible and try to show your client in the best light possible without without stretching credibility.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for your book. Thanks for the chapter. Next week, own your past. Should be a good one. Should be a good one. Another good one. How's the work on your new book coming?
Yeah, I'm making some progress. And
are you?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah, I'm hoping, knock on wood, maybe sometime in March or something.
Oh, very cool.
Or later.
Oh, awesome.
A little later after March. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Well, I wish you both a wonderful, happy, joyous week. And I look forward to seeing you next week. It was great to see you after the long holiday break. We all needed it.
Yeah. All right. Good to see you guys too.
You too.
Okay.
Take
Thanks.
care, everybody.